In a time when the sun rose to tolling bells and set to tales spun by flickering hearths, the medieval village was both cradle and cage. Encircled by fields and fastened by faith, villages rarely roamed beyond their familiar furrows. Here, in this close-knit world of soil and sweat, the village wasn't just a mere dot on a map. It was the universe, a tapestry where the Lord's manor loomed like an ancient god on the hill. The church chimed eternity's echo, and the village green buzzed with the daily symphony of bleating sheep and whispered rumors. Step into this world rich with traditions that haunt our landscape. Music still imagined stepping back into a time when the world beyond the village was a place of mystery, hidden by the curve of the earth. In medieval Europe, the village was the entire universe for its inhabitants, home and hub of every facet of existence. Life began and ended in this humble cluster of cottages, fields, and shared histories. Each villager was bound by the rhythms of nature, seasons deciding the pace of life and death, dictating its terms. Within just a stone's throw from their birthplace, the layout of these villages resembled a well-woven tapestry, intricate yet simple, a main street meandering through the heart, flanked by thatched roof homes and small gardens or pastures extending into the distance. Life pulsated around a shared center where the church bells marked time and fields blended into forests, promising both opportunity and danger. Villages were molded by their environment, strategically nestled by rivers or tucked within valleys, a testament to the keen survival instincts of their founders. Daily life unfolded with a comforting predictability as villagers went about their tasks from the first light to dusk. Fields needed tending from sowing in hopeful springs to reaping under the relentless autumn sun. Winters brought their own demands, with animals in need of care and tools to be mended by crackling fires. Yet in the midst of labor, villagers found moments of kinship at the marketplace, where goods and stories were traded, or around bonfires where laughter rang out amidst the hush of nightfall. For those who called the village home, isolation was a double-edged sword. It offered a refuge from the chaos of the outside world, where forests concealed wolves and bandits, and rivers could usher in unwelcome guests faster than a gathering storm. But this security bred its challenges. As survival hinged on unity and cooperation, the success of one was the success of all, creating bonds strong enough to withstand the trials thrust upon them by fate. Village society mirrored the greater feudal order, hierarchical yet the lord of the manor reigned from his elevated estate, but his authority depended on the toil of the peasants. Each person contributed to the village's fabric. A smith's hammer rang true in crafting tools, while the midwife whispered coaxing words to bring new life into the world. The reeve stood as a much-needed bridge between lord and villager, balancing delicate negotiations that ensured cohesion under the weight of feudal demands. Economic life was a patchwork of subsistence and barter. Coins were rare visitors, as villages favored trade in the tangible grains, livestock, and labor. Craftsmanship walked hand in hand with agriculture, with artisans weaving skills into the threads of everyday life. Together, they propped up the frail village economy, rooting their community against the tides of famine or failure in the field. Every transaction was a testament to trust, the unwritten currency binding neighbor to neighbor. Education shunned the paths of incant parchment, relying instead on oral tradition. Work was the classroom, each generation passing essentials down through practiced hands and whispered tales. Elders served as living libraries, sharing stories imbued with law and lessons that outlasted any written decree. Yet the thirst for knowledge was never fully quenched. The literate priest or occasional wanderer brought news and ideas from far-off lands, setting alight the imaginations of those willing to listen beyond their village walls, within their hearts. Villages held firmly to a blend of beliefs that encompassed both reverence and superstition. The church played a central role, anchoring spiritual life and offering the divine assurances of ritual and prayer. But the power of the unseen also loomed. Large sacred wells whispered promises of healing, while folklore warned of the mischievous or malevolent lurking in moonlit shadows. These beliefs, a medley of pagan roots and Christian leafage, created a canvas painted in stark contrasts, yet woven seamlessly into the village's soul. Living in a medieval village was a precarious dance with survival, with challenges as relentless as the season's plagues. Those unwelcome specters swept through with deadly grace. Villagers turned to both the church and their own remedies in desperate attempts to ward off these invisible foes. Crop failures, famine, and war loomed as ever-present threats, demanding resilience and unity from a people who had weathered countless storms as our journey among the hidden lanes and quaint cottages draws to a close. We are left under the spell of places peopled by perseverance and stories more vivid than the finest tapestry. These villages, in their modest existence, hold tales that transcend time, legacies of human spirit, courage, and connection, stretching across the centuries. Even as we leave this medieval world behind, its essence remains etched upon our imagination, reminding us of the layers of life that whisper beneath. Our modern world, keeping its whispers alive and its stories timeless in the medieval village observation, was key. A glance up to the Lord's manor told all, perched slightly away from the clustered, timber-framed homes. But demanding attention, it loomed. Over life like a massive hawk, the manor, whether stone or timber, signified power and control. Observing all nestled in its shadow, it was the hub, not just of administrative dealings, but of the village's collective psyche where the tenants lives. Were both governed and defined inside the manor, was designed with care, each room echoing with purpose. From the grand halls, meant for feasts, to private chapels, asserting sacred authority. Its architecture united the secular with the divine here. Was where the Lord held court-shaped destinies and collected dues. His influence molded the village's identity, creating an existence bound by soil and feudality. Ties a structure neither questioned openly nor strayed from frivolously. The Lord himself stood as both protector and overlord, embodying a blend of benevolence and tyranny. His reputation among villagers was as dual as the life inside the manor walls. To some, he was a defender against the chaos of raids and banditry. To others, a heavy-handed oppressor placing unbearable demands with a retinue of knights or men-at-arms. He fortified his domain, guarding against danger, while extracting every ounce of economic benefit from his serfs. His dominion was a moral one, to authorizing marriages and distributing land plots, embodying the feudal contract binding villages tightly to their lord. Life within the lord's imposing estate contrasted starkly with that outside peasant life, involved labor bound to fixed rhythms in a tapestry of mud. And toil, while within the manor living, was a nuanced performance of status and privilege. Vast kitchens bustled to supply meats and spices, the trappings of distant lands that never touched peasant lips. Tapestries softened stone walls, hearths provided more than mere warmth. Privilege was tangible, as the scent of roasting meats mingled with the wisps of imported incense. Yet what really ran this small universe were its people, the essential gears in its grand machine, a dedicated staff of stewards, chamberlains, and chaplain ensured life ran smoothly. Supervising from grain to faith, regular feast marked the calendar. Gatherings that flaunted status with the Lord and his kin at elevated tables, and others sat below, hierarchy clear. In each bite swallowed, interacting here was not just tradition, but dance of expectation, duty, and sustenance. Beneath this surface ran the economy fueled by feudal obligation, a system as simple as it was brilliant in preserving hierarchy and productivity. Vassals worked the Lord's fields out of obligation for protection and space to cultivate. For themselves, economy thrived on barter. More than gold, the exchange of produce, more regular than coin, within records faithfully maintained to the satisfaction of the manorial coffers. Justice, too, was of the manor's keeping with the court, serving both as stage and arbiter, resolving disputes where breezy barn meets stern steward. The proceedings, molded by custom rather than law, were informal yet absolute. Swift decisions, reinforcing the delicate order here. Governance was a community exercise. Villagers acting as jury, knitting relationships tightly into the village fabric, ensuring each knew both their place and say, commanding it all, often unseen, but always felt was the steward, the linchpin entrusted to maintain the peace and prosperity of the manor. His role demanded polyglot skills, blending management, legal know-how, and a measured diplomacy that could balance both lordly demands and village whispers. In his tasks, he was as close to an equal of the Lord as possible, embodying firm structure, yet maintaining a humane grip on the ticking heart of the manor. For peasants, the manor was more than walls and window panes. It represented a paradoxical blend of security, a guaranteed protection, and exploitation, endless labor tethered by invisible, inescapable chains. There was an implicit contract linking life to soil and survival to service offerings of labor exchange for a promised safety, a plot of life. Even as they trudged fields, a community sense emerged, woven with feasts, farm work, and shared spaces. Iron bonds forged in fire and furrow. Moreover, the manor stood as a repository of cultural authority, the host of elite events that confirmed new alliances and whispered secrets older still. Customs filtered down from its peak, influencing even peasant threads and fieldcraft, a constant reminder of its legacy. Over sumptuous meals and ceremonies, alliances formed disputes, settled life, continued in a cyclical justice firmly rooted in tradition. Yet the manor's serene utterance of constancy couldn't mask shifting winds that threatened its walls. From beyond, wars, raids, and plagues challenged its endurance, forcing adaptations at every signal of vulnerability. Sometimes, manors fortified bastions against chaos beyond that would sooner consume them than not, always under the silhouette of imminent change. Bit by bit, the foundations giggled under population shifts, economic demands, and the undeniable weight of central authority. The Black Death whispered through crops, leaving empty fields, stirring demands for wages and a fairer playing field. Again, whispering of change, the inevitable transformation of the manor system signaled an epical shift, a loosening of feudal bonds, gradually unveiling individual freedoms and new social layers. Yet for all the centuries stretched between then and now, the echoes of the medieval manor are present. Its boundaries trace paths, still walked its hierarchies, permeate present-day systems subtly. As we tour these relics of stone and tale, the manor is both memory and warning, urging reflection on humanity's timeless dance of power and community. In the tapestry of a medieval village, the church was both its anchor and its compass, standing tall as a constant witness to the ebb and flow of daily life, with its steepled silhouette cutting through the village skyline. The church served not just as a house of worship, but as a beacon of faith and order. Each villager, be they peasant or noble, would at some point circle through its embraces for a ceremony that marks their life, perhaps a baptism, a marriage, or a final farewell. Here, under the stone arches, generations grappled with big questions of life and death, all framed by a shared faith that stitched individual threads into a close-knit community tapestry. But beyond its sacred role, the church wielded temporal influence, as well, an authoritative diary, keeping record of life's milestones through meticulously preserved documents. The church's calendar didn't just track time, it set the beat for village life. Sunday signaled a pause for worship, while each saint's day offered respite from labor, blending spiritual obligations with a touch of festivity. A village's week, unofficially, began with the bells of the church, a sound as reliable as the rising sun calling villages to prayer, work, and rest. Imagine morning sunlight drifting through narrow windows as the church's bells pealed over the fields and cottages, ringing in time and routine. Each note transformed these bells into a bridge between heaven and earth, framing work and worship as parts of the same divine composition. The passage of days, punctuated by the Feast of Candlemas or the celebration of St. Michael, intertwined with villages' agricultural pursuits, knitting a fabric where sacred and secular were its warp and weft. A festival like Easter or Christmas was not merely a religious observance, it was a season-defining event that swept up the entire community in joy and shared tradition, binding everyone through ritual and revelry within the sphere of village governance. The church was judge and jury, doing out moral guidance woven with law. Church courts upheld canon law, with vigil addressing infractions that range from adultery to blasphemy. Through penance or public shame, these proceedings fortified the moral and social fabric, subtly reminding everyone that spiritual and earthly disciplines marched to a shared beat. The priest, often the sole literate figure, about served as the shepherd of souls and keeper of records, straddling roles as spiritual guide and communal advisor. His counsel, ranging from disputes of land to questions of faith, was sought widely, extending his influence far beyond the sanctuary. As an educator, he stood each week before his hopeful complex flock, rendering scriptures, mysteries, comprehensible and relevant. His guidance bridged the gap between the faithful and the divine, his words garnished with the weight of tradition and the vital pulse of everyday life. In their daily lives, villagers wove prayers into the rhythm of morning and evening punctuating ordinary acts with gestures of faith, a sign of the cross here, a whispered blessing there. Communal life was a braid, threaded with ritual baptisms, drew together families in a shared promise of faith marriages, melded households under the church's blessing, strengthening community bonds. Even death saw the village come together in solemn rites that honored life and soul. Superstition walked hand in hand with devotion, a shadowy companion. Filling the spaces between doctrine, villages clung to charms and talismans, alongside crucifixes blending established theology with whispered traditions. The church resisted such superstitions, aiming to absorb but not erase them, creating an interwoven fabric where officially sanctioned faith and folk belief sat side by side. As for the church itself, its physical presence was a testament to faith's power and aspirations. Constructed from stone hewn by local hands, village churches were solid. Symbols of hope, their architecture reached skyward, an earthly mimicry of divine yearning inside stained glass, filtered sunlight into vibrant halos, illuminating biblical scenes for those who couldn't read the altar, central and elevated grounded ceremonies in reverence and reminded all of the sanctity their faith promised. Both peasants and nobles gathered here united in their quest for solace and salvation, though their experiences diverged. For peasants, the church was solace from toil, and a doctrine to bolster resilience amid uncertainty. For nobles, it was a stage for piety, intertwined with displays of power. Nobles contributed through endowments and constructions, seeking both spiritual merit and social prestige, illustrating the dual face of devotion, one simple, the other entwined with earthly ambitions. Economically, the church held influence through tithes, and lands its coffers, ringing with the labor of villages, a testament to its sway within this microcosm. Villagers paid tithes, often grudgingly, yet understanding the church's pivotal roles, both as spiritual shepherd, an economic engine. In turn, church-owned lands, cultivated by many hands, formed another pillar of its economic might, creating a symbiotic partnership between spiritual leadership and village life essentials. In these many roles, the church sculpted a cultural landscape rich with faith's enduring imprint. Its teachings established communal ethos, threading charity and humility into the core of village life, shaping a shared legacy and worldview. Lasting beyond medieval walls, villagers learned to view life through this lens, a symphony of belief and resilience, echoing forward through time. Even as stones crumble, the church's legacy carves paths in the present, a testament to the once vibrant heartbeat of a world where faith held court, daily sculpting people and places alike. Life in a medieval village hinged on a peculiar yet efficient agriculture system known as the open field system. Picture a tapestry not of colorful wool but of earthy browns and greens, narrow strips of farmland, each tilled by different hands. These plots are scattered like puzzle pieces, meant that no single peasant owned a vast expanse of land. Instead, they shared a patchwork of earth with neighbors, a necessity born from tradition and practical farming. Each peasant's plot was interwoven with others, ensuring that the success or failure of one could sway the harvest for all. This interconnected web fostered a spirit of cooperation, blending individual labor with communal strategy. In this agrarian choreography, unity was key. Villagers synchronized their efforts through seasonal cycles. From plowing to sowing, their rituals were woven with both cultural roots and agricultural necessity. The strips guaranteed that the soil remained fertile as crops rotated and fields lay, in turns preventing nutrient exhaustion. This checkered pattern also kept any single villager from monopolizing the most fruitful land, tying their destinies together with cords of shared soil and shared fate, recording each season's triumphs and tribulations in the land's silent memory. Villages opted for communal decision-making, a blend of agricultural governance and primitive democracy. Decisions about crop rotation and FAO periods were forged in communal meetings, often encircling the village green. Here voices were heard, grievances addressed, and strategies set, nurturing social bonds as well as bountiful harvests. Yet alongside cooperation lay inevitable strife. Boundaries blurred, vandal hooves trampled crops, and pests threatened yields, inciting disputes overseen by the village reeve, whose wisdom anchored him as both arbiter and guide. Justice in this tight-knit community, often swift and rough, highlighted simmering tensions beneath the surface. Envy, rivalry, and an aching desire for control in a world governed by uncertainties through the four seasons. The village pulsed with relentless labor. Spring beckoned with the promise of renewal, as villages sowed their fields with hopeful fervor, tilling earth with ox-drawn plows. Grain seeds, barley, oats, wheat, were planted by hands aged and young. Each family member participating in the annual dance of survival. Summer arrived with haymaking, and villagers, armed with wide-brimmed hats, turned fields into drying canvases of cut grasses, storing sustenance for livestock in the bone-chilling months ahead. By autumn, the climax unfolded. Fields bristled with ripe grains, harvested with urgency under the watchful sky, promising nourishment. For the cold darkness in waiting, even in winter's grip, peasants toiled, tending livestock, mending tools, whispering prayers for spring's return. All wrapped in a cyclical blend of toil and fortitude, ingeniously medieval peasants maintained soil vitality through crop rotation, a generational wisdom transformed into routine. They alternated between grain and legumes, allowing land to rest, fortified by grazing livestock that provided natural fertilization. This cyclical savvy born without modern science showed an uncanny grasp of ecological interdependence. Each village held its own rotational rhythm, a careful balance of short-term gain against long-term health, interpreted through the language of survival and stained by tradition. While their practices seem scientifically astute today, they were enshrined in communal regulation, a meeting point of superstition and empirical acuity. In the hands of these villagers lay tools both simple and vital. The plow, a blend of wood and metal powered by the strength of oxen, was the beating heart of tillage, breaking the arduous clay to yield its bounty. Maintenance of these tools, sickles, spades, scythes, was a craft in itself, their communal use emblematic of shared struggle and shared hope. While tools embodied simplicity, they were forged by necessity's fire, serving as unspoken heroes in the daily narrative of rural resilience. These implements, extensions of their wielders, found life in handcrafted utility, underpinning the communal ties that bound the peasants' world. Livestock was more than mere agricultural support. They were lifelines. Cattle plowed, chickens provided eggs, pigs offered meat, goats supplied milk, and all served as both companions and resources for poorer peasants. Horses were rare treasures, while other animals afforded sustenance in the leanest of times. Bonds formed between human and beast were as necessary as they were cherished. Livestock welfare intricately linked to human survival. The sale or slaughter of a favored animal marks desperation, underlining the intimate symbiotic relationship binding peasant households to their flocks and herds. These cherished companions woven into the fabric of daily life. The tapestry of their existence was further enriched by the rhythm of celebrations. Peasants wrapped their grueling work into the folds of religious and cultural festivity, punctuating seasons with feast days that blended Christian rites and pagan roots. At these gatherings, labor released to joy, spiritual rites entwined with Marant superstition, mingled with gratitude, weaving a festive relief into the relentless pace of life. Celebrations like Lammas or St. Martin's Day punctuated the labor calendar, offering much-needed breaks where communities came together, bolstering spirit and soul for the trials ahead. Amid such resilience existed a simmering tension, a strain, occasionally snapping into rebellion. Peasant revolts underscored economic strain and social pressure ruptures in the feudal order driven by frustration and hunger. The 1381 Peasants' Revolt in England starkly illustrated these divides, as taxes and serfdoms, chains chafed too keenly though often quelled. Revolts swed seeds of change, revealing an acute, if rarely articulated longing for fairness and security. These uprisings, though fleeting, hinted at an enduring thirst for justice, propelling subtle shifts in medieval strategies and awakening whispers of reform. Village livelihoods spread beyond tilled fields. As trade crafts buffered against subsistence's fragile edges, peasants turned idle hands to weaving, basket-making, or leatherwork, crafting goods for trade or debt. These skills, entwined with guild hierarchies and community networks, represented both personal resilience and communal strength, fostering connections that stitched villages to a broader economic quilt. Blacksmiths, millers, brewers, linchpins around which village life revolved, melded agrarian output into sustenance and continuity. Women's roles too were pivotal. They spun, brewed, and wove, supporting households with an unspoken steadfast grace. Beneath this symphony of shared toil lay an indomitable spirit. Medieval peasants often painted simply as hardships. Acolytes lived vibrant narratives that defy simple caricature, bound to land and tradition. Their stories unfold as an enduring ode to human tenacity. These lives, navigating imposed structures and ecological demands, demonstrate an enduring dance of adaptation and interdependence. Peasant plots, more than displays of labor, symbolize the persistence of community and the perpetual quest for survival and belonging. Peering into their world offers overtones of truth, an echo of shared history, whispering through leaves of passing time. In the heart of a medieval village lay the green, a modest yet lively expanse that formed the backdrop of everyday life. This patch of common land shared by villagers and their livestock was not just ground underfoot, but the very soul of community interaction. Here in this verdant space, the rigid hierarchies of the wider world seemed to soften. Lords and peasants mingled without the barriers that defined their everyday lives, creating a rare environment of openness. Amid stark societal divisions, with its strategic positioning, the green was a nexus of information and activity. Never silent, always alive with human presence and purpose on any given day. The village green was a stage upon which the grand play of life unfolded. Children at play their games, a joyful cacophony that mingled with a pastoral serenade of Luwian cattle traders haggled and bartered, their voices a rhythmic chant of commerce, while festivals sprinkled splashes of vibrant color across the landscape. Old men recounted tales of yore, perched like sentinels over the past, as young lovers whispered promises under the verdant canopy, threading new stories into the village's tapestry. The green's significance transcended its physicality. Aspects of village life into a shared cultural identity, but the village green was not just a pastoral haven, it doubled as a hub of commerce. Markets and fairs transformed this quiet patch of grass into a bustling, vibrant bazaar. Villages displayed their goods, proudly enticing passers-by with textiles and pottery, while eager buyers traded surplus produce for essential items like salt or iron. Traders from afar brought exotic goods in use from distant lands, their itinerant presence a highlight. Of village life, commerce here was an art, a social event where reputation and relationships mattered as much as the goods exchanged. Bartering demanded wit and negotiation, often accompanied by laughter and gossip, even as traders mingled in harmony. Disputes sometimes cropped up like unruly weeds, requiring negotiation or the intervention of a lordsman. The green thus stitched the social fabric, ever tighter bridging divisions with communal threads during festivals and celebrations. The green truly came alive. These moments of joy and solemnity punctuated the medieval calendar, allowing villages to set aside their toils in favor of festivity. The air filled with music and dance, with flutes and drums guiding feet through age-old steps, weaving the community into a cohesive whole. Rituals that seem strange to modernize, May Queens crowned or fires lit to battle darkness, held deep significance, reinforcing social norms and drawing the village closer. Festivals offered opportunities for courtship. Competitions injected friendly rivalry, and laughter rang out, etching these rituals into the village's cultural bedrock. Yet the green was more than just a meeting place. It was the epicenter of social communication. Social media gossip flitted through the air like sparrows, its wings carrying tales of births, deaths, and scandals. Far from trivial, gossip was a crucial social tool, shaping reputations and exerting invisible influence. It was here that women, often in the margins of official structures, wielded power, crafting narratives and steering perceptions with subtlety and skill. Layers of truth and fiction intertwined in these whispered conversations, crafting a narrative tapestry as intricate as the society that spawned it. Rituals and superstitions also played out on this common field, reflecting a world where religion and magic blurred. From simple gestures like planting protective rowan trees to elaborate seasonal ceremonies blessing fields, these acts represented attempts to exert order over a chaotic world. They infused the green with a spiritual resonance, tying human effort to divine will. Even the routine was imbued with mystical significance, offering reassurances in a precise age. The green was no stranger to conflict and resolution. Either dispute simmered amid its tranquility, sparked by matters as trivial as stolen geese or as personal as family feuds. Yet its public visibility prompted resolutions with villagers. Stepping into roles of mediator or witness, sometimes the presence of authority figures lent weight, but more often, it was collective wisdom that prevailed. The green, a courthouse, and a stage maintained the village's delicate balance, upholding social order amidst seeming chaos. For children, the green was a playground and a school. It buzzed with youthful vitality, a vibrant thread connecting past, present, and future. Here, under the watchful eyes of their elders, they learned through play, absorbing the customs and superstitions that would guide them. Into adulthood, games mirrored adult life, fostering skills of cooperation, strategy, and endurance. Teenage flirtations and friendships deepened on these grounds, marking the green as a crucial arena. For the youth's transition into societal roles, season after season, the green mirrored the cyclic rhythms of village. Life's spring sparked it into life heralding, planting, and festivals, while summer's warmth kindled a flurry of fairs and markets. Autumn harvest tinged it with gratitude and urgency as the community prepared for winter's harsh embrace. In winter, the green lay silent under frost, a temporary pause before spring's inevitable return. Each season shaped the green's character, anew mirroring the resilient cycles of those who called it home. Throughout history, major events etched new chapters into the story of the village green. Wars, plagues, and administrative changes left indelible marks. Their impacts felt deeply in contrast. This space remained a constant, offering villagers continuity amidst upheaval. Today, the green stands as a relic of medieval life, a testament to a world where community was both an ideal and a necessity. Its legacy endures, reminding us of enduring bonds with the land, communities, and traditions that continue to weave the tapestry of life across centuries in the heart of the medieval village, where life was a perpetual dance between survival and superstition. Stood three vital pillars: the mill, the forge, and the bakehouse. Each was more than just a place. They were the lifeblood of village existence, thumping in unison with the rhythm of everyday toil, starting with the village mill. This structure was more than a simple building. It was the community's heartbeat. Nestled by a stream or river's edge, its stones ground tirelessly, whispering the song of turning gears and flowing water. Every villager, regardless of station, depended on this mill to transform grains into life-sustaining flour. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of pulverized grain, a sensory miasma of labor's rewards. The miller, perched amidst this orchestrated commotion, held a position of both privilege and suspicion. With the constant exchange of grain for services, whispers of deceit were not uncommon, painting a picture of a man caught between necessity and distrust. Yet the mill's importance could not be overstated, symbolizing not only sustenance, but an intricate dance of power, where villagers grudgingly surrendered a portion of their grain to the lord who owned the land. Maintaining the delicate web of feudal obligation. Nearby, the forge blazed with relentless intensity, its fiery maw devouring raw materials and breathing out essential tools and implements. The blacksmith, a figure of almost mythic regard, presided over this domain, like a sorcerer conjuring strength and utility from metals. Cold embrace inside iron sizzled and sparked under the rhythmic assault of hammer on anvil, conjuring an elixir of craft and industry. The blacksmith's reputation was forged in both sweat and whispers of mysticism, his ability to manipulate fire and steel casting him as both craftsman and alchemist. The goods he produced were indispensable, from the mundane cooking pots to weapons that defended the village's very existence. Payment for such services was a tapestry of barter, where goods and labor exchanged hands instead of coin, further intertwining the village's fates and fostering a pragmatic yet delicate economy. In contrast to the mill and forge's frenetic energy, the bakehouse was a sanctuary of communal sustenance and social exchange. It was here that villagers gathered to bake bread, the ultimate symbol of life and sustenance. The air was fragrant with the comforting aroma of baked dough, and the bakehouse echoed with the laughter and chatter of women exchanging recipes and news. This was not merely a place of production, but a crucible of fellowship, where the breaking of bread symbolized unity and shared tradition. As with the mill, access to the bakehouse was often controlled by the lord, demanding a share of what was baked. In another subtle assertion of feudal power, as critical as these places were to daily life, they were invariably lord-controlled, a testament to the tight grip of feudal power. Villagers, entwined in their roles and routines, were constant tenants of their realities. The mill, forge, and bakehouse all reinforced the feudal hierarchy, a web of dependency where autonomy was scarce, but industriousness helped etch out small freedoms. This symbiotic relationship hinted at endless compromise. Yet amid these constraints, the vibrancy of the village thrived. The economic lifeblood of these communal centers ran without the convenience of coins. Barter ruled an intricate dance of goods and services, measured in grain loaves or labor weaving, a web of trust and reciprocity. This exchange underscored not only the practicalities of survival, but also the ever-present precariousness of their lives, where a single bad harvest might tip the balance into destitution. Yet this intertwined existence fostered a deep sense of community, a recognition that cooperation was not just preferred, but necessary. At the heart of the village's tapestry were its crafts. People, the miller, the blacksmith, and the baker, each a guardian of skills and traditions passed down through generations. Their craft was a reflection of the community's identity, grounding their work not in mere utility, but in continuity and respect. These artisans were custodians of culture, and their efforts sculpted the ville's daily life from the raw elements they molded and finessed. In this world, rituals of production reigned supreme, every motion, sound, and scent, steeped in tradition. Yet innovation crept in like whispered secrets. Villages continually adapted, blending old with new, altering techniques to better meet the needs of their environment, whether sharpening a farming tool or infusing bread with local herbs. They were creators ever responding to the shifting challenges posed by their landscape beyond utility. These spaces were hubs of social activity where work mingled with merrent conversations, laughter, and shared stories rippled through the air like song. Each act of labor doubled as a thread in the village's social fabric. Here storytelling flourished, bonding the community with tales woven between the clang of the smith's hammer or the miller's rhythmic grind. The intersection of personal and professional lives meant tensions simmered, occasionally boiling over into disputes. Yet resolutions were sought through community, dialogue, and wisdom, fostering harmony and ensuring that peace triumphed over discord. Ultimately, these bustling centers of medieval life, with their blend of continuity and change, endure as legacies of human ingenuity and the struggle for communal survival amidst the ever-present shadow of feudal power. Their story is the universal tale of people crafting life from the elements, drawn together by shared need, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of human connection. In the heart of a medieval village, justice was not meted out in grandiose stone halls, but rather in modest barns or beneath the open sky, where villagers gathered under curious eyes. The manor court was the beating legal heart of village life, its purpose straightforward: to maintain order, settle disputes, and uphold the Lord's law in a time when formal legal systems were but distant myths. To most, this local court was more than just a mechanism of punishment. It was essential to community life. Villages flocked to these proceedings, not just out of necessity, but often drawn by the allure of public drama. Here, disputes unraveled and secrets spilled out, creating a vivid tableau of human folly. From the trivial, like a neglected fence, to serious matters like theft, this theater revealed not just the laws but the values, fears, and hierarchies that underpinned rural life. Presiding over these spectacles was the Lord's bailiff, a figure of authority, who carried the heavy burden of interpreting justice, a blend of custom and law. This person was often a local of some status, familiar with the village's dynamics, as much a diplomat as an administrator. The bailiff had the power to issue fines and uphold justice with the Lord's interests at heart. Their decisions could ripple through the village, sowing conflict or maintaining peace in an intimate community. Justice was personal. The bailiff often knew both the accused and accuser, their families, and their histories, reflecting the tangled web of relationships that could see fairness twinned tightly with favoritism, benevolence with stern admonition. Unlike modern jury systems, the manor court's jury was not about impartiality. These were neighbors, familiar figures who shared fields and festivities, and sometimes grudges. The idea of neutral judgment pad against the weight of communal consensus. These jurors brought personal familiarity into the courtroom, a factor that often skewed justice into a forum for hidden vendettas or familial loyalties. While at times reflecting the community's moral compass, these proceedings highlighted the complex intrigue of village life, where grudges might be settled under the guise of legal redress. Here justice was not blind, its eyes were wide open to the village's sins and secrets, A variety of offenses crossed through this rural court, often mirroring the harsh realities of medieval survival. Trespassing, theft, and neglect stood as common charges, echoing the struggle for order amidst shared resources. Penalties often took the form of fines, a heavy burden for peasants living on the very edge of subsistence. These fines offer us historical glimpses into minor transgressions and the norms of a bygone society. For women, offenses often mirrored patriarchal standards. A scolding woman disrupting public calm may face fines or humiliation. For challenging the order, failing to kneel in church highlighted a blend of social and moral demands. In such a world, the court's decrees could deeply affect lives and family survival, cultivating habits of caution and compliance, or quiet defiance. Justice here was not solely about codified laws, unwritten rules, and social norms. Carried equal weight, these tacit standards shaped daily life, dictating what was deemed acceptable or reprehensible. While official laws served the communities, social fabric was a tapestry of customs, deeply rooted in village life. Breaching these norms drew swift and often stern communal censure. In an era where reputation weighed heavily, social punishment was often more severe than any fine, compelling villages to walk a tightrope between personal desires and communal expectations. Class distinctions were deeply entrenched in the manor. Court serving primarily the lord's interests, peasants often bore the weight of justice more severely there. Missteps scrutinized closely with harsher penalties. Nobles, even those within village bounds, frequently bypassed such justice. Their transgressions dealt with privately or through lenient channels, reflective of the feudal hierarchy's biases. Disputes involving nobles tended to favor the wealthy and powerful, illuminating systemic injustices that left peasants resigned to a tilted scale of justice, fueling tensions that could explode into dissent. Superstition wove itself into the fabric of medieval justice. Decisions were colored by divine will and supernatural interpretations. Accusations of witchcraft or malevolent dealings often targeted those on society's fringes. The court was a stage for fear and fascination, with trials by ordeal reflecting a belief that divine intervention would guarantee justice. Despite the seeming absurdities, these practices were firmly rooted in the medieval mindset, where earthly and divine matters blurred into one. For villagers, the court was a theater, not just of human justice, but of celestial judgment. Punishments extended beyond personal consequence, serving as public spectacles to reinforce order. Stocks, pillories, and floggings in public spaces ensured offenses weren't forgotten, embedding them in communal memory. These punishments were multifaceted: a deterrent, a shame, and paradoxically a form of traditional entertainment. Such spectacles reinforced the lord's authority and underscored the societal norms entrenched in village life. Stark reminders of medieval justice's immediate and public nature. Yet amid this harshness, the manor court also acted as a conduit for reconciliation. Many disputes resolved here were about restoring harmony more than exacting retribution. Grievances aired publicly often dissolved tensions, allowing grudges to settle. The court was a dual force in village life, both a strict enforcer and a gentle reconciler, ensuring that village friction did not boil above control, maintaining the delicate balance of communal life. Even as villages changed and modern legal systems emerged, the legacy of the manor court lingered. It left an indelible mark, reinforcing the balance of centralized authority with local customs. This court was a microcosm of medieval life, reflecting its hierarchy, beliefs, and values, despite its practices receding from modern view. Its lessons continue to shape our understanding of justice, reminding us of its role not just in law, but in binding communities and maintaining social equilibrium. In the medieval village, the reeve was a linchpin, navigating the tightrope between the demands of the lord's manor and the needs of his fellow villagers. Positioned as an arbiter, a role marked by both prestige and precariousness, the reeve ensured the fields were sown and harvest gathered, upholding the delicate rhythm of village life. His authority was a double-edged sword, both a marker of respect and a source of tension, as he endeavored to distribute land and resources fairly while keeping the peace, balancing the desires of the manor with those of the villagers. The reeve's every decision could significantly sway the tide of prosperity or poverty. His influence was deeply felt and deeply personal in the pastoral expanse of the village. The herdsman stood as a steadfast keeper, a silent guardian of the community's livestock, an essential link in the chain of survival. His life was dictated by the rising and setting sun, shepherding flocks across verdant pastures, vigilant and alone. He battled the elements, the lurking threat of predators, and the potential betrayal of human greed with unyielding resolve. His relationship with the villagers was built on trust and necessity, as they depended upon his expertise to protect the animals that were their lifeline. A guardian of sustenance, the herdsman walked his path with a quiet pride attuned to the songs and whispers of the land he traversed. Meanwhile, the midwife's presence bridged a threshold between life and death. In an era haunted by the specter of mortality, she was the trusted guide through labor's shadowed gates. Wielding knowledge passed down through generations, replete with chants and herbal remedies, she offered comfort where modern medicine held no sway. Her duties carried her from cradle to grave, delivering children into the world and soothing families as new souls departed prematurely. A compassion rooted in understanding life's fragile nature. This intimate relationship with the village's women folk broadened her influence beyond childbirth into realms of advice and guidance. The midwife was both a healer and confidant, embodying empathy and endurance, a step removed, yet intrinsic to life's fabric. The plowman was another artisan, one whose craft echoed the eternal dance of earth and sky. His mastery over the soil with iron and oxen not only shaped harvests, but also the foundational lines of village survival. Each furrow he cut declared a promise of sustenance dependent on weather's fickle collaboration. His was a job of grit and tenacity, linking him intimately with the land's mysterious whispers. The plowman's toil transformed the landscape into a canvas of possibility, echoing with the potential bounty posited by his expert touch and a testament to the quiet dignity of labor bound to the natural world. Amidst these roles, even children bore responsibilities unfathomable by modern standards. Their tasks, while seemingly minor, formed the backbone of village operation, whether chasing birds from newly sown fields or drawing water from the shared well. Children's labor was vital. An education through action. It was these small hands that ensured legacy, bridging generations in task and tradition, with work's necessity crafting a mosaic of survival and community that underscored the complexities of medieval existence. The baker, too, crafted sustenance from simplicity, rising before dawn amidst the mingling scents of yeast and smoke. He transformed grain into bread that bore life itself. His bakehouse was a cornerstone, the heart of sustenance for both peasant and manor. Each loaf emerged, bearing the essence of patience and skill, a ritual dance with the capricious elements of heat and humidity. Though his craft seemed a constant, it required precision, an alchemical marriage of elements to nourish the village's body and spirit, drawing people together in a shared routine infused with warmth and familiarity. Alongside the baker, the blacksmith's forge stood as a crucible of transformation. The air around him was alive with the rhythm of hammer upon anvil, shaping iron into objects of utility and protection, tools and weapons, implements of society's beating heart. His labor was steeped in a mysticism echoed in the sparks that flew from each indomitable stroke, marrying the physical to the profound. The blacksmith's creations fortified village life, a bridge between raw element and refined utility that spoke deeply to his unique, almost mythical status within the community. There by the mill, another guardian kept vigilant watch. The miller, tied to the rhythmic turn of massive stones, he managed the grain's metamorphosis into flour, a craft steeped in both solitude and necessity. This task imbued him with both prestige and suspicion, his integrity constantly measured by the transparency of his results. In the miller lay a custodian of life's building blocks, an unwavering sentinel, ensuring the village's survival through skill and machinery set apart from, but essential to, the community's resilient quotidian. Lastly, the carpenter, both dreams and reality from raw timber, a genuine architect of spaces. His craftsmanship shaped the bone and sinew of village halls and humble homes, borrowing from the land's bounty to enclose its children's lives. In every joint and beam lay stories of protection, community, and endurance, spaces into which villagers poured their hopes and histories. His work transcended the mere act of construction, weaving the essence of human habitation into the landscape's enduring tapestry, a testament to resilience. Not to be forgotten, village telltales carried the lore and news that linked daily life's disparate pieces, weaving story into The social fabric their narrative spun whispers into shared experience, making legends of common tales or king's edicts. It was through their words that the village found cohesion, information traveling on tongues, binding the past to the present. Through an ongoing powerful tapestry of spoken art and memory, as winter thawed and the grip of cold released its hold, medieval villages stirred to life with spring's tender promise. The fields, dormant and gray, shrugged off their icy blankets too, clothed themselves in green. This was a time when the earth called its people to action, as families prepared to plant the seeds of survival. The community moved as one, adhering to traditions and the open field system that divided land into narrow strips. Each strip, though scattered, was precious, demanding care, as peasants pushed wooden plows, oxmen trudging obediently ahead. The scent of freshly turned earth filled the air, mingling with the rhythmic shouts of laborers working from dawn till dusk, ensuring each seed was safely tucked into the soil's embrace. A dance dictated by necessity and tradition. Yet the season's rhythm was more than corporeal, it was spiritual. Spring bore a renewal that seemed to sync the village with the cosmic. Dance rituals woven with superstition perfumed the breeze with prayers. Blending sacred rites with daily labor, the church's bells punctuated not only today's work hours, but set the tempo for sacred intervals, where villages sought blessings for the harvest to come. Processions and feasts honored saints and patrons, infusing life's labor with liturgical grace, binding the people to nature's mercy and divine watchfulness. When the sun reached its zenith, summer's heat demanded relentless enterprise. Haymaking commanded the village's vigor, for hay was the lifeline of winter's coming chill. Timing and toil intertwined as villages armed themselves with scythes, their sweeps echoing through fields ripe with grass. Sweet summer scents of cut hay lingered in the air, reminding them of the harvest's importance. Children aped their elders' movements, learning tasks that would sustain them in years ahead, while seasoned eyes appraised their efforts from shady retreats. Despite cheer and camaraderie at shared meals, the looming threat of storms could steal it all in a moment. Eyes watched gathering clouds with dread, a relentless reminder of how nature, while a provider, was ever unyielding. As autumn arrived, nature's brush-painted fields gold with wheat and barley. This was harvest time, a whirlwind culmination of cutting, threshing, and storing. Everyone from the youngest to the oldest entrenched themselves in this endeavor for survival, leaned upon their united labor. The fields buzzed with the symphony of cydestes, while threshing floors hummed with the percussion of flails. Dust mingled with sweat, and the air hung heavy with anticipation, hoping this yield would stave off hunger in leaner months. Relief washed over them as barns filled, paving the way for celebration. Harvest festivals, at once communal and religious, marked a pause from toil. A breath of shared revelry. Feasts unfurled, laden with roasted meat, fresh bread, and ales, while bars regaled listeners with tales of fields and furrows. Yet beneath their laughter ran the undercurrent of nature's caprice. Each bounty a tentative gift. With winter came stark simplicity. Colors faded to gray, life slowed, huddled in wooden homes, sealed against the cold fires sprung up there. Warmth the heart of each dwelling, safeguarding against the chill and serving as hearths for storytelling. The scent of woodsome smoke, mingling with simmering pottage, filled their homes. A symphony of survival. Outdoor tasks dwindled to essentials. Tool mending, livestock care, while long evenings born of winter's dark lent themselves to reflection. The church, steadfast in sacred vigil, marked time with its bells, patient peal, offering hope and communion through cold nights interwoven through the seasonal calendar. Feast days offered reprieve and sacred connection, urging villagers to pause, realign, and find joy beyond toil. Bells called them to rituals, transforming humble gatherings into divine celebrations. Sacred liturgies, raised above their daily labors, at times blending seamlessly with pagan echoes. These days braided the community together, binding their lives with sacred purpose. In a world rich with uncertainty, rituals and superstitions anchored the medieval villages. Every action bore significance. Rites protected their realm from the unseen. From planting to harvest, these beliefs formed an intricate tapestry of security and identity blending. Christian and pagan elements, elders, keepers of ancestral wisdom, were sought. For their insight, healers and wise women poised on the line. Between suspicion and necessity, crafted potions and talismans believed to heal body and spirit. In villages of contradictions, saints walked alongside spirits' Christian liturgies, with tales of ancient gods creating a spiritual tapestry both reverent and pragmatic. This complexity birthed humor, a salve to hardship, where jesters and minstrels turned life's absurdities into shared laughter, offering momentary reprieves from the heavier realities of their existence. Their humor, threaded with irony, affirmed resilience, and the enduring spirit the senses wove the medieval world into a textured whole. The scent of earth and hearth, the melody of life in motion, and the tactile rhythm of labor, each sense immersing villages in their terrain. Through this, they fostered a connection shared between person and place, echoing through time. Despite the cycles of triumph and trial, the village remained adapting and evolving. Yet, rooted in its traditions, this enduring narrative resonates today, reminding us of our shared human journey and the enduring dance with nature's eternal rhythm. When the Black Death crept through Europe in the mid-4th century, it tore through villages, leaving behind a staggering death toll that altered them forever. Some villages watched as 60% of their people succumbed to this invisible foe, leaving behind empty homes and untended fields. The survivors left with no choice had to adapt to new roles, weaving together the frayed social fabric from what little was left. Strangely enough, this decimation allowed common folk unexpected bargaining power. With a shortage of laborers, landlords were forced to offer better terms to entice the few willing to toil the land. The feudal stronghold loosened its grip, and for the first time, peasants found themselves with a newfound, albeit bittersweet, leverage. While the plague clawed at the very essence of village life, regional wars and conflicts further complicated existence. Armies trampled fertile fields, reduced homes to ashes, and requisitioned precious grain, leaving villages at the mercy of famine. Yet amidst the chaos, villages demonstrated remarkable resilience. With identity and population in flux, villages rose from ashes, rebuilt by hands that intertwined old traditions with new realities shared. Hardships kindled camaraderie, uniting survivors under a banner of resilience. But it wasn't just pestilence and wars that tested these communities. A change in lordship would send ripples through village life. New lords arrived, imposing fresh rules, taxes, and expectations, often dismissive of local customs. Yet the people maneuvered through these changes with a deftness born of necessity. By preserving communal bonds and honoring deep-rooted traditions, villages maintained a semblance of stability, ensuring their core identity was never entirely erased. As centuries unfolded, economic transformations began to nudge the village economy from its steadfast, agrarian roots. The expansion of local markets saw villages near trade routes opening doors to new goods and ideas. Merchant classes emerged, nudging the economy toward a more dynamic model. Artisans and craftsmen found new markets, directly challenging the lord's economic dominance. Money, once a foreign concept, made its way into daily dealings, slowly pivoting the villages toward a cash economy that hinted at greater independence from feudal chains. Religion, the lifeblood of medieval communities, wasn't untouched by change. The Catholic Church dictated not just spiritual life, but administrative decisions. However, rumblings of reform and schism slowly made their way even to these isolated corners of the world. The village church, an RSS cornerstone, transformed into a forum for debate and subtle defiance. New practices emerged, emphasizing personal devotion and fostering a community consciousness less reliant on ecclesiastical authority. Architecture witnessed 2 centuries of change, captured the village's story through stones and beams. Natural disasters and wars laid waste to structures, necessitating rebuilding that left visible scars on the landscape. Yet with each reconstruction, villages captured their survival and aspirations in stone churches and fortified manor houses. These evolving structures stood as silent testaments to the enduring spirit of the people. In the realm of sanitation and health, medieval villages often grappled with the consequences of their close living arrangements. Disease spread easily, propelled by open sewers and dirty water. However, catastrophic events like the Black Death spurred a slow yet crucial evolution. Toward hygiene awareness, villagers gradually learned to distance midden heaps, dig deeper wells, and embrace a rudimentary form of public health awareness, essential for survival. Social structures, once as rigid as the stones of the manor, began to show signs of flexibility. The flight of serfs, too, freer pastures and a bolder peasantry, diluted the traditional bonds of servitude roles. diversified, nudging the social fabric towards a more fluid state. Emerging markets gave rise to a merchant class that began bridging the gap between the nobility and peasants. Women, amid shifting social dynamics, took on prominent roles running family enterprises and communities during challenging times. Through it all, the internal rhythm of village life evolved. Once anchored to agricultural cycles and religious calendars, villages began to embrace broader temporal experiences. Trade, mobility, and wealth diversified the village's pulse-shifting focus from mere survival to prosperity. Where once villages were enslaved to seasonal cycles, they now allocated time to community projects and local events, reflecting a maturing approach to collective growth. Even as villages navigated the ceaseless tides of change, they left behind a legacy that echoes through time. Names, boundary lines, and architectural remnants tell tales of resilience and continuity. These communities were microcosms of the broader social evolution that defined the Middle Ages, exemplifying adaptability in the face of adversity. Today's lingering traces of these villages tell stories of an unyielding human spirit, bridging past narratives with present realities. As we conclude this chapter, consider the echoes of these resilient communities and how their legacies. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more immersive historical tales.